Economist Richard Baldwin, author of Globotics Upheaval, spoke at a World Economic Forum meeting in China in 2018, just before the publication of his book. In this talk, he asked the audience to imagine living in a Star Trek world where workers could teleport from one part of the globe to another. He gave an example of accountants from Warsaw, Poland, teleporting to New York City in the morning and back to Warsaw at the end of the day. He gave this example because he wanted to point out that accountants in New York make more money than accountants from Warsaw. So economically, from an employer's point of view, if it was physically possible to have people from one part of the world who worked for less money commute to another part of the world where the cost of living was high, then it made sense to do that. But what happens to the displaced accountants from New York? Where do they go if their jobs are taken by people who work for less? This, of course, is what happened when factory jobs in the US went away and factories moved to other countries where the cost of labor was less. In this case, the factories moved, not the people. And so, as Baldwin tells us,
you should be a little more nervous and a little more excited about future globalization.
In another talk he gave a year or two later, he talked more about what he called telemigration, which is just a fancy word for digital service platforms for freelancers like Fiverr, Guru, or Upwork. And as we've stated before, these are jobs where the freelance workers compete with other workers around the world at race-to-the-bottom pricing. That's because in order to get noticed and get work, a worker on these types of platforms needs reviews and scores, and in the future, badges or tokens that are your credentials and provide a certified form of trust for the hiring manager or client. So to get these credentials and reviews, the worker lowers their prices to nearly free. This is not about the automation of work and more leisure time in our lives. This is about your further enslavement to the machine. This is Globotics. This is the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Self-destruct sequence.
The trust that employers have in your future worker self will no longer be part of your personal interactions, your character, or the kinds of qualities you portray or relay in an interview. Your trust will be digitized and tokenized. That trust will no longer be the kind of information that in the past was conveyed face-to-face in person. But what about the robots? You know, the botics in Globotics. We'll get there in a bit, but as you know, robots have been replacing humans in factories and manufacturing for years. Now through artificial intelligence, software robots are replacing white-collar jobs and will continue to do so exponentially in the years to come. This will only leave the top end of the managerial class in place to oversee the robotic minions of the future.
Get out of the way, puny humans. We have work to do.
Okay, but before we get there, we have to talk about what is happening now, how it will get there, and what that means for everyone, because this thing will be a form of slavery, and it's coming for all of us. White collar, blue collar, pink collar, no collar. It's likely we'll all end up on these platforms. Even if you don't work on a computer but provide in-person services like plumbing or cutting hair or making deliveries, those jobs will be on some sort of digital platform. The platforms and services which can easily be converted to this model already exist. TaskRabbit, Uber, Angie's List, and others will be how we get work and make a living.
But like we mentioned before a moment ago, We will be in competition with other people bidding on jobs that come along, based mostly on low price and good reviews rather than quality work. This happened to designers and coders when Guru started up, and it happened to taxi drivers all over the world when Uber and Lyft came along. Not only will workers have to work for very little money, these jobs will require constant updates in authenticated training and education, which will often cost more than what a worker makes through the gig jobs that they get. And it's the digital service platform jobs that will be a gateway for the robots.
Hooray for robots!
That we're talking about. Although AI software has been developed over the past few decades, it's only been in the last few years that it's become more feasible for replacing jobs in all sectors, and we have been the teachers. Artificial intelligence is built through machine learning. Machine learning is developed through structured learning sets. These provide the types of knowledge and information that humans know instinctively. We've been teaching the machines through our interactions on social media by posting photos, opinions, thoughts, and ideas. We've been providing information and data for the structured learning sets that machine learning accumulates, which is used to create the artificial intelligence software.
Things are not going back to normal. Things are not going back to normal. Things are not going back to normal.
Today, we're still providing these data sets and actually creating the code through our online activities. All our interactions, from posting photos to identifying images in the CAPTCHA security boxes, are used to identify what things are, which are the processes and ideas that create the code.
Moreover, the children are now providing free labor and coding for the future AI infrastructure through their activities on tablets and laptops while they are at school or home with online learning. Plus, augmented reality and virtual reality will add more to the machine learning data sets while using our children without really teaching them anything. That's because children are being empowered with "I did this" education through playlists that provide personalized pathways that give learners just the right learning at just the right time, at just the right place in their lives. This, of course, gives them options to earn digital certifications or badges that give employees access to rich, verifiable, and secure information about their achievements. Companies like Concentric Sky create the badges and the platforms for playlists that turn your child into a corporate report to learn what corporations want them to learn and nothing more. This type of education is not only training your children to be able to code the future digital infrastructures needed for full-scale automation, but they're also providing the code for the data sets that will be used to develop more and stronger artificial intelligence. Preschool children are also being exploited through smart play tabletops that record their actions, their expressions, and their behavior. Their interaction, their humanity, their childhood is captured and translated into data sets. In other words, our children are providing free labor and being used to code the future through being children. Now, let's talk about robot toys. Clickbot is an adorable robot designed by a Pixar animator. You know, Pixar.
To infinity and beyond!
Clickbot is marketed as a toy, and kids can play with it like a toy, but it's not really a toy. It's a device for learning. The real purpose behind Clickbot is to teach children how to code. The marketing around the toy ironically feels nostalgic as it takes its cue from how classic toys have always been displayed in boxes, their appeal to children when the boxes are opened, and how each component is easy to snap together, kind of like Legos. But unlike Legos, Its simple, clean lines and one basic color keep the child focused on all the different ways ClickBot can be reshaped. It can be an alien, a dog, a spider, a wall climber, and a selfie stick. Think of it this way. Children are now the assembly line workers, similar to how uneducated adults were the assembly line workers in Henry Ford's innovations. This assembly line concept for ClickBot is blockly programming, and in the way specific shapes, designs, and machines were put together to build the cars, ClickBot, along with blockly coding, is simply moving shapes around, and it helps to see these shapes in fun designs that click together to create the companion robot that you and your child control. But at least Henry Ford's assembly line workers were paid for their work. With ClickBot and all the learning of the necessary components of coding technology, parents will be on the hook for paying for their kids to build the future. Starting out at $400 for this learning device, masquerading as the next must-have toy, seems a hefty price to pay to watch their kids basically be slave coders of 4IR technology. What we see with ClickBot is something we talk about consistently throughout our video essays. We are witnessing innovations that create the class divide. Do you think your kids can afford a $400 toy with all the bells and whistles? Can you afford to buy the latest iPad or other devices, which is the platform required to interface with ClickBot? What about the upgrades needed once the next innovation of ClickBot rolls out? By not being able to afford something like ClickBot and learn the valuable coding lessons that come with it, what sort of opportunity will your kids miss out on simply because you can't justify spending $400, $600, or $1,000 or more on a simple robot toy? Or do you feel this investment is worth it to give your child access to a meritocracy he was not born into? Devices, I mean toys like ClickBot or any similar learning devices at their fingertips, are training the children to be the managers of the future. They will have the skill set, they will have earned their badges, and their dashboards will represent a higher rank, making them more appealing to agencies and potential employers, giving them a competitive edge in the technology being rolled out in the fourth industrial revolution.
But there's something else we need to talk about. In the interim, after we've all been trained to stay at home because geofencing and mobile devices will either keep us in place within certain geographic boundaries or allow us to move about more freely. And through tracking and tracing our personal data, our income, the amount of debt we have, and our health is all being fed into the system, eventually ending up on blockchain ledgers. The next step after that will be haptic technologies, avatars or synthetic versions of ourselves. Through digital service platforms, remote work through controlling haptic robotics will allow you to stock shelves in a Whole Foods market in San Francisco or clean toilets in a Manhattan hotel from your own home somewhere else completely. And so, like the accountants from Warsaw working in New York, you will be doing whatever work you're qualified for at a cheaper rate than you might have before, bidding against other workers and getting paid in micropayments. But it gets even better. As these jobs become more complicated, requiring more skill sets and training, we'll need to upgrade our education. But this will cost money, and it will be up to us to pay for it. And like college education in the past, workers in a lifelong learning world will constantly be in debt in order to stay competitive. The cost of working will keep you in debt, and you'll need to keep working to pay off that debt.
All the while, there will be no chance for workers to organize because they are busy competing against each other for the scraps of work that will be available, as well as being physically separated. And competition is what economists like Richard Baldwin think is good.
Please be gentle, I'm just an economist.
Not only that, but recently the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, or the PRO Act, the strongest set of labor protections seen in this country in decades. But freelancers, their classification and their right to organize to get the same kinds of benefits and pay that full-time and especially unionized employees get, have been left out. So, with the future of work moving toward freelance employment on digital service platforms, the PRO Act is just a cynical and disingenuous move by lawmakers to placate unions and other liberal supporters.
We want more robots.
Okay, but first, let's talk about avatars and synthetic versions of yourself. In the early part of the 2000s, people played in an online environment called Second Life, in which they were represented by avatars and walked around different environments, engaging with other people who were also represented through graphic avatars.
More recently, Verbella has been given an opportunity through the COVID office closures to create 3D office environments, with the employees represented as 3D characters. What they have developed is being tested and used in real time by companies as a proof of concept for the working environment of the future. Verbella and Second Life are now poised to create the environments that allow people to interact with each other in virtual, gamified office settings. This will no longer be what you do after work. It will be what you do all the time. And those people will be dehumanized and reduced to a cartoon figure or a 3D version of themselves, all the while interacting and speaking to others with their playlists of tasks, their badges, and their Pokemon Go work life. But whether you're working as an avatar in a 3D simulated office or stuck driving robots around a warehouse, hotel, or store, there are plans underway in the Moonshot program and Japan's Society 5.0 to merge our consciousness with artificial intelligence, cyborg technology, material science, and biotechnology built on an ultra-high-speed, low-latency global network. Framing it as liberation and equality, the technocrats and billionaires are telling us that we will be freed from the existing constraints of physical, cognitive, and perceptional capabilities, as well as geographic and economic restraints. This means that the elderly and the disabled can work too. No one will ever retire or have physical limitations for employment, and we can all compete for the same jobs.
Our physical limitations may go away, but so will our unique differences as people. That's because, in the name of equity and equality, the things that make people special, like language differences, creativity, and humor, will be part of the upload and will be distributed through the network. If you never could paint a picture or play a musical instrument, you will. But virtually, of course, because it won't be your body painting or playing music. You will be the ghost in the machine. So if that's the case, why will we need our bodies with our consciousness in the cloud? It will be more like Max Headroom than the Matrix. And your essence, your consciousness, who you are, will be trapped in a digital prison, enslaved forever, working like a machine in service to the billionaire ruling class. And now, robots.